This is the story of a man who fought against death and nature in the most merciless waters of the Pacific Ocean for more than 400 days, a record that still stands as one of the most remarkable survival tales in history. His name was José Salvador Alvarenga, a fisherman from a small coastal village in Mexico. In November of 2012, he set out on what was supposed to be just another fishing trip with a companion. The boat was only about 7 feet long, far too small to handle the fury of the open ocean, but it was enough to reach the fishing grounds near the shore. Their plan was simple: go out, lay their nets, catch fish, and return home within a day and a half. But fate had a different plan. Not long after they had moved more than 100 kilometers from the coast, a violent storm began to rise over the horizon. With waves crashing around them and strong winds tearing across the water, they pulled up their nets, abandoned their catch, and tried desperately to race back toward land. They could even see the coastline in the distance when the worst possible thing happened: the engine of their tiny boat failed. The storm struck them head-on, pushing them farther and farther from safety. They had a radio, and for a moment there was hope, because Alvarenga managed to send a message to his boss on shore, giving their position. But before help could arrive, the battery of the radio died, cutting off their only connection with the outside world. Within days, the storm had carried them hundreds of kilometers into the vast emptiness of the Pacific Ocean. Food ran out within 2 days, and the reality of their situation set in quickly. They had no nets, no hooks, and no proper equipment left. To survive, they began grabbing whatever nature sent their way. When birds landed on the boat, they trapped them with their bare hands and ate them raw. When turtles surfaced near their drifting craft, they wrestled them aboard, drank their blood, and ate their flesh to fight off starvation. For water, they could never drink the salty ocean, so they prayed for rain and collected every drop they could in plastic bottles. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and their physical and mental state began to collapse. Hunger and exposure tested them beyond human limits. After about 4 months, Alvarenga's young companion could no longer take the suffering. Exhausted, hopeless, and mentally broken, he gave up and ended his life. That left Alvarenga completely alone in the middle of the most silent, deadly expanse of ocean on Earth, surrounded by nothing but endless waves and sky. The loneliness was crushing. Imagine floating for months without seeing another human face, without hearing another human voice, with only the cries of seabirds and the crash of waves as company. At one point, Alvarenga saw a massive cargo ship on the horizon. It was the first vessel he had seen in half a year, and hope surged in him like never before. He waved frantically, shouted, and signaled with everything he had. But the ship was too far away, and no one ever saw him. The vessel disappeared into the distance, leaving him again with nothing but despair. Yet he did not give up. Somehow, his will to survive kept him alive. He drifted for 11 months, covering an unimaginable distance of nearly 8,000 kilometers across the Pacific, exposed to the sun by day and freezing winds by night. His clothes had long since rotted away, and all he had left to protect his skin was a single undershirt. His body was weak, his mind battered, but still he clung to life. Then, one morning in January 2014, something changed. He spotted coconuts floating in the water and birds flying overhead, clear signs that land was near. With the last of his strength, he steered his boat toward the direction of life, and finally, after 439 days at sea, he reached a tiny island called Ebon Atoll in the Marshall Islands, one of the most remote spots on the planet. When he stumbled onto the beach, emaciated and barely recognizable, he encountered his first human being in over a year. Tears filled his eyes. He had done what seemed impossible. He had survived over a year adrift in the deadliest ocean. But his struggles did not end there. When authorities heard his story, many refused to believe it. How could a man live alone at sea for over a year without equipment? Some accused him of lying. Others suggested darker things, that he had killed and eaten his companion to survive. The family of his lost partner even filed a case against him, suspecting foul play. For months, his story was questioned and investigated. But eventually, evidence and the testimony of his former employer confirmed that he had truly been lost at sea. He was released and allowed to return to his home in Mexico. He returned home not as the same man who had once gone out on a simple fishing trip, but as someone who had stared directly into the face of death for more than a year. People gathered around him, some with admiration, some with doubt, and others with suspicion. Many could not believe that a man could last that long without proper tools, food, or water, yet the scars on his body and the emptiness in his eyes told the truth of his suffering. Every detail he shared matched the realities of the sea, the winds, and the currents, something no imagination alone could create. He described how he would talk to himself to keep from going insane, how he dreamed of food he could never have, how he prayed for rain as if his life depended on it, because it truly did. He explained the strange rhythm of survival, where one day was filled with a catch of birds or fish and the next week could bring nothing at all, leaving him weak and dizzy. He admitted he often thought about simply letting go, closing his eyes, and surrendering to the sea, but then he remembered his family and his desire to one day see land again, and those thoughts gave him just enough strength to endure another day. As news of his story spread around the world, people debated whether to call him a hero, a liar, or simply a man of extraordinary luck. Experts in survival and oceanography studied the routes he had drifted, and they confirmed that his path across thousands of kilometers was scientifically possible, carried by the currents of the Pacific. The harsh truth was that while luck played a role, the sheer willpower to stay alive for so long in those conditions was something very rare. He himself never pretended to be a hero. He admitted he cried, he admitted he felt broken, and he admitted that sometimes he wanted it all to end. Yet somehow he kept going. When he held the book in his hands later, the book that told the full story of his survival, he wanted people not only to know about the suffering but also about the message behind it. Life, no matter how cruel, is still worth holding on to, and even in the darkest storms, there is always a chance that light will appear if one refuses to give up. His journey became a reminder that the ocean, as vast and merciless as it is, cannot crush the will of a determined human being. He drifted for 14 months, faced hunger, thirst, loneliness, storms, and death itself, yet he came back alive, carrying with him a story that the world will never forget.